Backup Care. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Hamill, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. I'm thrilled to have here with me Jody Gassman and Ronnie Mae Weiss. Jody is VP of Senior Care Services here at Care.com, has over 25 years of experience in the adult care field, and I've had the great pleasure of working closely with her during my time here at Care.com. Jody will be sharing some great stories with you today, and we can't wait to hear from her. Ronnie Mae is the program manager at the Work-Life Center at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and has been implementing and managing work-life integration and benefit programs for decades, even co-founding Parents in a Pinch, Care.com's backup care program provider. I've also had the pleasure of working with Ronnie Mae in the past as well. Jody and Ronnie Mae will introduce themselves further in just 1 minute, but first I wanted to share with you a few logistical details for today's webinar. As you can see, we are leveraging our webcam capability here today. On your screen, in order to make the video image larger or smaller, drag and drop the divider line that you see between the video feed and the PowerPoint slides to adjust the size. If you have any questions during today's discussion, please feel free to use the chat feature in the GoToWebinar interface, and we will address as many questions as possible. We do aim to make this an interactive discussion today. Also, you will be receiving an email later today with a link to the recording of today's session. Now on to our introductions. Jody, thank you for joining us today. Love to hear a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for attending this webinar. I know it's never easy to take a break from your workday, but we are very excited to have the opportunity to tell you more about adult backup care and what some of the benefits and strategies are for implementing a program like this. My background is I am a licensed master's level social worker, and as Sarah mentioned, I've been in the healthcare and senior care field for about 25 years. And I started my career at Mass General Hospital, where I was a clinical social worker. I later became director of discharge planning and case management in a community hospital in Medford, Massachusetts. Later was the chief operating officer of a Medicare certified home care agency. And about 10 years ago, I became very interested in the notion of employer-supported elder care, which barely existed. It was around the time that my dad's dementia was progressing. I had 3 children at home, I worked full-time, and I was sort of the prototype of the sandwich generation caregiver, and was traveling back and forth to Western Massachusetts to help my parents, and later created a backup care program to help employers support their caregiving employees. And this really was spurred by an experience I had when a caregiver didn't show up for my dad, and I ended up bringing him to work with me, which is not really a sustainable solution. So I'm excited to be here today, and in my role as VP of Senior Care at Care.com, I have the opportunity to oversee a wide range of senior care programs that help employers and employees with the challenges of caregiving.
Thank you so much, Jody. Ronnie Mae, thank you also for being here today. Would love to hear a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Well, I'm really happy to be here, as I've really devoted my career to supporting caregivers in the workplace. I started my career at the Children's Museum creating a parenting program. It was the Boston Children's Museum, and then went on to work at Work Family Directions, creating senior care as well as adoption and many of the what we call regular caregiving services. So my experience had been a lot in the child care and elder care arena. And most recently, I was at Harvard University as the Director of Talent Management, where all the issues of caregivers constantly came up, especially in recruiting and retaining our best and brightest. So now I'm at MIT, where there's really a culture of innovation and great support for caregivers. And I've been really happy to work with vendors who have been able to support our caregivers, both our postdocs as well as our staff and faculty members.
Great. Thank you so much, Ronnie Mae. Okay. Our first slide here just wanted to show a few stats that illustrate that when it comes to adult and senior care, the need is there. It's sometimes a more silent need than child care issues are. We often hear more about child care challenges from our employees and colleagues in the workplace, but not so often do we hear about adult and senior care issues. As you can see here on the slide, nearly 70% of caregiving employees are forced to make compromises at work to deal with care needs at home, which is a significant figure. Over 65 million people provide care to an adult who is ill, disabled, or geriatric, and furthermore, 60% of those folks are doing so while working full-time. Jody was a case in point there, talking a little bit about her life dealing with care needs at home and working full-time. When we think about our individual organizations, that's a large chunk of our workforce that's dealing with this issue that I mentioned is not often talked about as vocally as child care issues. So that begs the question, what can we as organizations do to help support these employees? And that's exactly what we're going to tackle today. Let's start with some background on what exactly adult backup care is and how it works. Adult backup care, which provides temporary care for adults in your life and yourself, fills in gaps in unusual and unexpected circumstances when ordinary care arrangements just aren't an option. Jody and Ronnie Mae, can you explain a little bit more about what exactly adult backup care is and how this works as an employee benefit?
Well, the way I describe adult backup care is I really refer to it as temporary care. And what we see with employees who have caregiving responsibilities is they really are thinking about this 24/7. And when there's a breakdown in care needs, such as a parent who might perhaps live long distance and has dementia, and the caregiver either doesn't show up or isn't properly trained to handle the dementia, the employee immediately starts to scramble and figure out how they're going to fill that need. And that's really where we come in. The reason we call it adult versus senior backup care is that this benefit encompasses adult family members, including a spouse or partner, a grandparent, an in-law, even a sibling or an adult child. And we really try to explain that to employees that if you have a need for temporary in-home care, if you have a need for transportation to a medical appointment, including one for yourself, or light housekeeping, or even companionship, adult backup care can really be a huge benefit in terms of time, stress, and money, because typically the hourly rate is subsidized by the employer.
Great. And for me, what I really feel is the difference is we try at MIT to focus on our entire demographic. So we have a lot of young people and we have a lot of boomers between our faculty and our staff and postdocs. And really there are many times that people who are living alone who have an accident or have an injury or have a hip replacement, something happens in their lives that they really need support. And to have MIT there providing adult backup care for them, if they live alone or if they have a spouse or partner who's working and can't be there all day, really makes the difference, and in many cases makes the difference of their commitment to MIT because they've had support through that trauma, really. The other thing that's really important for us around adult backup care, it does include support around life housekeeping, companionship, personal care, and transportation. And so it is different than backup child care, and certainly equally as important.
Great, thank you so much. That's great background. So many of us are already familiar with child backup care, and to your point, Ronnie Mae, adult backup care is quite different in many ways. So I'm wondering if you could outline for us a few of the key differences between child and adult backup care.
Well, I would say that typically the adult care is less urgent than child care. And the real difference, as I have seen it play out in the organizations I've been in, is with childcare, it's the parents who are making the decisions around what type of childcare, when, how, and they're negotiating all of those details. Oftentimes in adult care, especially if it's care for an aging relative, there's multiple decision makers in the family. So that means all the siblings and possibly the spouse of the adult who is in need of care are part of that decision making. And so one thing that the Backup Care Service does is help with that. The fees are less. The fact that it's credentialed agencies all over the country means that everyone in the family can feel confident and comfortable with the care. It isn't that just one sibling is making the one decision on the provider. And that really helps to ease any conflict in a family around getting the help that's needed for the aging parent.
Yeah, and I might add, too, that our placement specialists who take the calls and arrange the backup care are skilled in senior care. And so they really understand the landscape of senior care. And oftentimes people call us and don't even know exactly what they need, but they heard something that they have this backup care benefit, and their mother just had a stroke and she went home, she had a nurse, and now the nurse is no longer coming and she's not that strong. So what do they do? Is it even appropriate to use the backup care? So it's really the onus is on us to help the employee figure out how to best use this benefit so it can benefit them and benefit their family members and really provide a reprieve in the ongoing challenges that families face around senior care.
I would say the one thing that's interesting for me is when I speak to our employees about backup care, at first they think it's just for their older relative and just in the greater Boston area where MIT is. And then when I let them know that, in fact, it can be anywhere in the country, and it's available to their relative or parent, spouse, partner, adult child, actually at a reduced rate than they would pay if they were looking on their own for care. Plus, it's a credentialed service so that the organizations that are sending the adult care support and backup care are from a credentialed agency where they have been trained. People all of a sudden understand what a benefit this can be for them and really support their time at work with less stress and more focus.
Great, absolutely. I'd like to talk now maybe about some instances of, and we touched upon a few, but just some broad examples of the times when an employee might need to use this benefit for themselves or for a family member. And I'm sure you both have some great examples and even some personal stories you might want to share about that.
Well, I've got a number of examples that I think will help illustrate how people deal with some of the challenges of caregiving in general. So one example is a partner in a law firm I met a couple of years ago who was very interested in the fact that his firm had this benefit, but he said, I don't really have a need for it. And I said, oh, you don't have family members or aging parents anywhere? He said, oh yes, I do. I have a 92-year-old mother who lives in rural Pennsylvania, and she lives alone. I said, well, she must be doing pretty well if she's living alone at 92 in rural Pennsylvania. He said, well, she's a tough old bird, and she refuses all help, and it drives me and my daughter crazy. Now, this is not an atypical situation of a feisty, independent parent who refuses help, but in fact, the daughter was taking time off from work, and so was the employee, to really help manage her care, particularly taking her to doctor's appointments, which could be quite a distance because of where she lived. So together we hatched a plan that she had refused help up until that point, and it had been a disruption for him at work. So instead of offering his mother help, he asked her to help him out and enlisted her to help him evaluate a new benefit at work. And she was willing to give it a try, and as a result, he introduced the notion of having a caregiver come to the home and take her to a doctor's appointment just to try it out. And in fact, it worked out. She liked the caregiver. She got to the doctor's appointment, and thus began the new path of having some in-home care so that she wasn't so isolated. And often I tell families you have to start somewhere, and an incremental approach is usually better than coercing families into having a lot of help all at once. And we have seen families use this benefit when someone is temporarily recovering from knee replacement, surgery, stroke. Dementia is often a reason that people end up using it for varying reasons. And we also encourage families to think about someone who's healthy like themselves, that they may be out on a temporary disability for some reason, that having a caregiver during that time can be really useful.
You know, Jody, it's very interesting because we had an employee, a very senior scientist, who clearly needed her knee replaced. So what happened was she kept on feeling, I have to be at work, I have to be at work, but she was consistently missing more time at work because of her knee and being in such pain. So when she learned that she lived alone, that she could get the knee taken care of, take care of the medical need, and then have someone basically come as often as she needed to do her light housekeeping, do the cooking, do the shopping, and take her to the doctors, because you have to go and take her to physical therapy so she would recover, that it gave her enough sense of well-being that she did go and have the surgery she needed. And now she's back. I see her around campus, and she's walking and happy and recovered. And so having this backup care for yourself or for individuals in the organization helps them maybe make good health decisions to plan for sort of future well-being. I think the other thing I just wanted to say is, so MIT has had this benefit of backup adult care for a number of years. And I get this call from my son, who's 30, in LA, saying, I just broke my foot, and I'm going to be okay. My friends can come on the weekend, but during the week, I can't ask them to come over, and I have to go to the doctors all the time. You know, I'm not quite sure what to do. So, of course, I, as the mother, went to see him for a couple days, and as I was there, I realized I couldn't really stay for the month it was going to take him to recover. And then my son went to visit for a week, and my husband went to visit for a week, but ultimately he needed ongoing, consistent help for the period of time that he had his broken foot. So I thought for a moment, and I said, wait, we have backup care. I'm going to call them. And so what happened is we called, and there was a Pasadena organization that was the credentialed senior care provider. Someone went over. The first person really didn't work for him. He called me and said, Mom, this person might be good for someone who's like 80, but it won't work for me. I said, okay, no problem. Call them back. So then they sent someone else who for that entire, it turned into 2 months. For that entire 2 months, once a week, went and took him to the doctor, took him shopping, did light housekeeping and cooking, and now actually that his foot is better. He says he really misses the caregiver and the extra support. But it made a huge difference to me as an employee, because I really could not go, and he couldn't fly back home to Boston. So he was in LA, and there was no way he could come to Boston where we could have taken care of him. So we used the backup care, and we were really happy, and so was he.
I think that's a great example of how this benefit can be used. It's not just for seniors in our life, you know, to your point, that it can be used for ourselves, our adult children, our spouses, our partners. So thank you for sharing those stories. That's great. I did have a question come in that I wanted to pose to you, Jody and Ronnie Mae. is there a typical number of days that employers would provide to their employees in terms of the adult backup care coverage?
I think it's usually somewhere around 15 to 20 days, and that's really a decision that's made by the employer, and we really help guide that decision. I think the important piece to understand with adult care is that that can be used in different chunks. So sometimes people will use it consecutively because that's what the need is, but oftentimes they don't need all the days at once, and they will have those 15 or 20 days recurring each contract year, so they're renewable. And I think that's really important, and it provides the flexibility that really matches the needs of families.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right. So in terms of folks that might be interested in offering adult backup care as a benefit, a lot of people just don't know where or how to get started. From an organization's perspective, how is the adult backup care program typically implemented? Ronnie May, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how the benefit was implemented and rolled out at MIT.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, what I have seen in many organizations actually rolling out backup care, not just at MIT, but at previous organizations where I was the work-life manager, is first to really have to identify and document the need. And so those employee surveys that go out, different organizations and companies do them every other year, every 3 years, to include questions in there about the need for backup adult care. That helps. The other thing is having focus groups with different employer groups in the organization to see what their needs are, really where the pain points are. And the third thing that we did, because I was new at MIT 2 years ago, I went and spoke with many different departments, letting them know what the Work-Life Center offered, and then asking them where did they feel the pain, where as managers were they seeing a need. And it continued to come up in all of those meetings with department managers, this issue of caring for aging relatives, caring for spouses and partners and adult children, and individuals themselves needing medical care but living alone and not being sure how they could manage that. So I did hear it from many different departments. So then you really start establishing the need and quantifying it. And then the other thing we did was we just looked at the demographics of our organization. And in our case at MIT, there's a large percentage of our staff and faculty members who are over 50 and therefore possibly have more elder care needs. So we put all that together and we really let the employees talk with us. And then what I did was I tested it, and we had different seminars once a month on elder care issues. And there was a huge response, over 60, 80 people coming to each of those seminars. And from those seminars, we sent out surveys and asked them what was important to them, what their needs were, where were they feeling the conflict between work and family responsibilities. And so we really had all of that data. And with that data, we were able to go to our senior leadership and show the need, both with demographics and stories. Because I think the storytelling is very, very compelling. And what we also realized is that offering this as a benefit for all of our employees, it really created more of an egalitarian, comprehensive, and equitable support to all employees. Because when I did first get to MIT, people said, oh, the Work-Life Center, oh, you guys take care of all the child care on campus. And so the focus really had been on many things, but people thought of the Work-Life Center in this area of child care. And here we were really understanding the need for backup care for adults. And it really does help create a suite of employee benefits across the organization. So you're meeting all the demographic groups. And when one's young millennials have a skiing accident or some sort of injury, they can use this service also. So it really does span across the demographics of an organization.
Yeah, and I think those are really important points, as well as the point that you brought up, Sarah. We are really in an unprecedented aging phenomenon, and it's impacting the workplace in significant ways. And boomers, as they age, want to stay in the workplace, and they're valuable. They have experience and history of professionalism, and they have a lot to offer. But they need a different type of support, one of which is flexibility, another is support for their caregiving needs. So I see adult backup care as a tool within the toolbox. And I think all companies need to be thinking about their toolbox and how to support the diversity of ages and caregiving needs in their organizations, and to understand and appreciate the complexity that goes along with that.
You know, one thing, Jody, that we've talked about a number of times is that having backup adult care really contributes to creating an environment of your organization or company or institution of higher learning as a great place to work. And there's been recent studies that I've read that have talked about that when people leave their existing organization, they don't leave to stop working. They leave to find a more supportive environment for themselves as a caregiver. And that's very significant. So we feel that by offering the backup care, the backup adult care service, we are contributing to having MIT be a great place to work.
That's a great point. An interesting question just rolled in that I'd like to pose, if I may. It states, which is a good point, that women have historically, taken on much of the burden for child and senior care. Ronnie May, has MIT seen any difference in the way in which men are being helped by this adult care benefit?
Well, it's an interesting question because when we probably run about 30 work-life seminars during a semester, so that's about 60 during the year. And one goal I always have is, okay, do we have different demographics coming, and do we have men coming, right? And in our elder care seminars, we do have more men coming to our seminars than our other seminars. And we run seminars on teens and parenting and adult children. So that is one thing. In fact, one seminar we had, the father is a faculty member, and he brought his entire family. So his wife, his daughter, his granddaughter came. It was an Alzheimer's seminar, and he really wanted everyone to have the experience and the education and information about caring for their grandmother. So the entire family came to that. But what we are finding is, yes, men are caregivers for their aging parents. It is very real. And in many cases, men are caregivers for their aging spouses or partners. And so we are finding, when I look at our statistics of who used the service, it is the one service where we are reaching men.
Wonderful. That's great. Great to hear, and a great question from one of our attendees.
Excuse me one second.
Sure.
Jody, have you seen any studies or research that talk about how many men are taking on the caregiving responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's about 60% women, 40% men. The shift is more towards an equal balance. Women tend to do more of the hands-on personal care, and part of that is just for practical reasons that women tend to live longer, so there are more mothers to be cared for, and it's more appropriate for women to do that. But women also are often in the role of being the emotional support, not just to the aging parent, but corralling the siblings and being sort of the primary caregiver. Men, on the other hand, are helping out in lots of ways, and sometimes they do the more tactical tasks, legal, financial, which is a major part of preparing for senior care options down the road. But we see a lot of men who are calling up with some of the same challenges and worries and concerns that women are calling about. So I think this is a fairly ubiquitous area that it affects everyone, because everyone has at some point had parents, and if they continue to age, chances are they're going to have some type of chronic illness and need some kind of support.
Great point. Thank you so much. Let's move on now to talking about how to get your employees engaged with this type of benefit. As we know, educating and communicating with your workforce, especially if you have a large workforce, can be challenging. And we know that making a program like this successful is making sure that folks are aware of it. So I'd love to hear from you both on best ways to educate and promote benefits such as adult backup care.
Okay, well, my feeling over a 30-year career has been, if you have an exceptional benefit and your employees don't know about it, then you're not adding value. So we really see this as a recruitment and retention tool for our employees and faculty. So what we really have done is come up with an entire strategy to promote this benefit. And it starts with launching the benefit and having someone from the backup care organization who is really well-versed in elder care come and speak to all of our senior leaders about not just the backup care benefit, but about the caregiving journey when someone is caring for their aging relative, so that we educate our managers. Because as we all know in this field, in HR, that if your managers, you can have a great policy, you can have enormous benefits, but honestly, if your managers aren't educated and supportive of the benefit, then employees don't feel comfortable exercising it. So for us, our first and most important place is educating our managers. And that can be a lot of work, because it means, at least at MIT, it means going to every department and the schools, because we have the engineering school, we have the Sloan School of Management, and on and on. But the education piece is key to get people on board. And then the other thing we've done, and you can see it on our website, and any of you can go to the MIT Work-Life Wellness website and see what we've done, is really put together clear, comprehensive information. Because the first thing is, when you say adult, oh, we have a new benefit, adult backup care, people don't really understand what that means. They don't even know they can't imagine or visualize what that service is. So what we've really done is MIT is both an internet culture and a poster culture. So we put posters all over the campus. We have gone to many departments, and we have a list coming up in January and February of more departments to go to. So we educate and we communicate. And then what we have also done very successfully is we've used our elder care seminars as a way to promote the service and help educate people. And then we also actually have 2 caregiver support groups going on campus once a month. One is caring for your aging relative with Alzheimer's or dementia, and the other is caring from a distance, which many of our employees are doing. And so we use that. And then what we've done is we've actually have a very large number of people who have come to our seminars, come to our support groups, or use the backup care service. And they will be getting every other month a newsletter if they choose to. And in the newsletter are wonderful tips and information and constant reminders about how to use the service. The key being storytelling, to have personal individuals telling their story about how they use the service is what people remember. And that is the best way we communicate with everyone. And then, of course, we get articles in the faculty newsletter, and we get articles in the MIT newspaper. So we don't stop. We basically have a promotional calendar, and every month we do something, which really educates our population. Because even if you yourself came to a seminar and you know it, I always ask anyone who participates in anything we do to let their coworkers in their departments know about the service. So they really become sort of our advisory group and our communication, part of our communication strategy.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And I would just add from the perspective of the vendor is that we really need to understand the unique culture of each and every organization. So working with Ronnie May, they are a poster culture. There's some organizations that use email, others forget it. Nobody reads email. So it's really adapting the strategy for promotion to the culture of the organization. And there's something else that I refer to as cross-pollination, which is where are the various touch points that employees might potentially benefit from hearing about these various benefits. So one would be an employee assistance program. We really try to work very collaboratively with EAPs so that we understand what they're offering and they understand what we're offering. Who in the organization manages short-term disability? Because oftentimes when employees are going out on short-term disabilities, as Ronnie May explained with her examples, they may have some specific needs, and then to find out, wow, I can actually use this benefit, that's great. They're probably not thinking about that. But I do think if I had to say one key strategy is I would agree with Ronnie May, you've got to educate the frontline managers, because if it's just the beginning to make the decision to add one of these benefits and to pay for it. That's just the beginning. The next step is really to communicate it and to utilize it and to have it really enhance your organizational culture.
Yeah, and I would just agree with that and say when we started this benefit, we work very closely with the short-term disability team at MIT. They have a stack of flyers and posters because they are the people who either need Family Medical and Leave Act if they're taking care of an aging parent or a spouse, or if they themselves are going out for surgery or procedures. And so that's a key contact in the organization. And the other thing is we work with we call them basically our human resources team, because if they hear from a manager about an employee problem about coming in late every day or really being out very often, sometimes that's seen as an employee relations issue. But if one goes deeper, it's because they're caregivers and they're trying to balance and manage it all. So we really work with our human resources team to help them use the backup care as a tool for the managers to help those employees. Because sometimes those managers feel like they don't understand how come this person is showing up late every day or gone every Tuesday morning for taking their mother to the doctor's appointment, and the work isn't getting done. So a lot of human resources consultants hear those complaints from the managers, and if they have as one of their tools in their toolbox to let their managers know there's a benefit and there's support. And not only that, if their employee is taking their mom to the doctor every Tuesday morning, maybe they could get backup care and have that be the person who takes their mom to the doctor every Tuesday morning. So it's twofold. It's supporting the caregiver with the time off that they need, but it's supporting the caregiver with the backup care that can really help them get their work done and be a responsible caregiver.
It's a great point and also a great segue into the next, kind of chunk that we'd like to talk about is we've gone over all of the great ways that this type of benefit can help an employee with caregiving responsibilities. But let's talk for a minute about what's in it for the employer. What are the major pain points that organizations can feel relief from by offering this type of benefit to their
which comes at a price tag of $34 billion annually to corporations. And that's as a result of being distracted or not being able to show up or taking FMLAs. From my own experience caring for my dad with dementia, there is absolutely no way that you can be responsible for a parent and not have it impact your workday, because so much of what goes on is during the day that you have to be on the phone with either healthcare professionals or home care providers or family members. But I think mostly it's the stress level. And one of the really positive changes that I see now is the shift from when I was going through it, that people just did not talk about it, especially with the downturn in the economy. Nobody wanted to say that, hey, you know, I'm caring for my parents, so I'm going to be gone the next 2 days. And usually people just made excuses. Now that companies like MIT and others are saying, we understand that this is a problem. You are not alone. In fact, about half the workforce is either going through this or will be going through this. So we are addressing it. I think just that communication has made a huge difference, and I think employees feel supported, and they will hopefully not leave the job, because if they do, it's a huge economic loss for employees over a lifetime of earning, and also a huge loss for the employer.
Great point.
Yeah, and my experience is that a work culture that supports its caregivers retains its best and brightest people. And also, it's a great recruitment tool, because if you want to recruit senior people, I mean, we want to recruit senior people, senior experienced people at MIT, and to know that there's a culture that supports them as a caregiver will help them make the decision to come to our organization.
So true. So, you know, I don't know, in my opinion, a benefit like this is truly a win-win for employees and employers alike. Kind of brings us to the next topic of company culture, which can in and of itself be an important recruitment and retention tool for many organizations. So I'd like to pose the question to you, Jody and Ronnie May, if you feel like family-friendly benefits such as adult backup care contribute to a company's culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it absolutely does. I've heard employees say over and over again, whether we're getting feedback on surveys or whether I'm at an organization giving a presentation, that just the fact that the company is acknowledging it and providing these benefits is really significant for them. And I think now we are looking at that organizations that realize you don't leave your life at the door when you walk into your office, that what goes on in your life every day impacts what you do at work, how well you're able to focus. And the work culture has changed with technology, because face it, most of us are not off when we walk in the door at home. We check our email. So there's a fluidity to how people approach work and life at this point. And recognizing that there are these challenges really helps people be able to sustain their connection to organizations. I know that it has for me. But this is not the only thing that matters. If the people that are managing employees are not sensitive to caregiving challenges, it doesn't matter what benefits you provide. And I've heard some real bad stories of organizations, someone actually whose father was terminal, needed to leave early to get to the hospital for a week and was chastised for it and ended up ultimately leaving that job. And then on the other hand, I heard of a company providing enormous flexibility, workers contributing sick time and vacation time to help support employees. So you want to be on the good story, not the bad story, because I can tell you, and you probably will echo this, bad stories travel fast and have a long reach. And good stories really have an impact as well. So I think sometimes what may seem like not a huge effort of being empathic, of providing people the flexibility they need to get through a challenging time can have a very long-range positive impact.
And I would say the one area which we really haven't addressed here is we have found that for employees, when they find out about the benefit and use it, and they realize that they're getting this very expensive service for a lot less money for an hourly rate, that means a lot to them. And I honestly knew that was one of the things on our checkoff list, but when I speak to employees who have used the service and they say, and we saved money because it was an employee benefit, and that was great. So what it really does is, the one other thing I think, Jody, that we haven't mentioned is for the other employees in the department, it helps also. So if someone is going out, every once a week taking their parent to the doctor's appointment or physical therapy, and then they get this support, and then basically the backup care person is taking them, the other employees in the department feel more supported too. So it has a ripple effect, and even if they don't need that service, the other employees, they know it's supporting a fellow worker, and they know it's supporting their department. And so it does have a ripple effect for creating a caring community.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. Looks like we have about 10 minutes left, so I'd like to wrap up with a question which might be on some of our listeners' minds. So if there's folks that are interested in family-friendly benefits and implementing these types of programs, what advice or recommendations would you offer in really
And if you take on this, this benefit, which now these days with the demographics in all of the organizations and the boomer population growing in organizations, the ability not to offer this will mean, I really think, more people leaving earlier, and not leaving the workforce, but leaving to a more caring, friendly, supportive environment. So, and keep the lines open of communication with the employees. If you take this on and things aren't working, figure out how to make it work. Or if managers aren't suggesting or supporting this, do the training for the managers. But once people really understand what backup adult care is, they embrace it and they use it, and it supports their work-life integration quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think another strategy, whenever possible, leverage testimonials, leverage positive experiences, because employees are mostly influenced by their friends and colleagues. And if they hear that somebody has used a program and how it was helpful to them and what the circumstances were, that will really spark them to think about that benefit and to perhaps trust it a little bit more. So I think word of mouth is a very powerful tool. And to Ronnie's point, I think that if there are problems, that it's very important to have conflict resolution with any program. And if we ever experience that someone was unhappy with a caregiver or there was an issue with an agency, we don't leave it up to chance or to the employee to that this is a partner, they are going to take responsibility, and there's going to be a positive outcome, even if there's some bumps in the road.
Right, and I would agree with that, because in many cases what we have found at MIT is it is the senior administrators and faculty who are using this backup care service, and they communicate it to their departments and their deans and the provost and the chancellor, and so the communication really is quite robust, and that means more people will use it if they need it, but also it supports the benefit for the future.
Great. I think we have one last question come in that I think we have time for, which might be on a lot of folks' minds too, having to do with cost. So when you look at the cost of benefits, which are indeed rising year over year, how do you justify the cost of adding a benefit to the decision makers?
Well, we have done that, which really is a very clear way. One looks at the average number of days people take off due to caregiving responsibilities, and I believe it's 7. I think it's 7 days a year that that employees take off to be responsible to caregive, whether it's a spouse, an adult, a child. And so the cost benefit, when we've done the cost benefit analysis, there was no question. Because the other thing is that these benefits really provide not a high cost if you have lots of people using them, because the more people that use them, the more you're getting for the dollars you have spent. But we at MIT, and myself and other organizations that we have provided this backup care service, felt that it really helped this whole equity issue around HR benefits, and that is very valuable in an organization. So no one feels, wow, our company or our school is simply taking care of people with young children. This really spans from millennials and Gen Xers to boomers. And so we really feel that there's a great value in it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And, you know, I think that the benefit really pays for itself if you have good utilization, not just from, you know, the dollars and cents perspective, but from some of the more intangible aspects of the culture and the sense of loyalty that's engendered by these types of programs.
Yeah, and I would say MIT, our new president, has said he wants MIT to be a caring community, and this backup care program does support that, and it really does support our HR recruiting efforts in terms of recruiting and retaining our best people.
Great, thank you so much. And it looks like we are just about out of time, so I want to extend a huge thank you to Jody and Ronnie May for being with us today. I think we covered some great points, some really terrific topics today. And if anybody on the line has any additional questions for Jody or for Ronnie May or just in general, on your screen is a phone number and email address that you can reach out to us, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. All right, that's going to wrap us up for the day. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your afternoon, and happy holidays. Thanks so much.